I'm going to show you a super advanced way you can create multi-layered bass lines that are harmonically rich and sound fantastic using multiple layers, some of which are super wide, some of which are quite narrow. This is a technique I use all the time in my productions, such as my remix of Tribe by Sleepless Skies and many more. Make sure you like and subscribe, really helps me out. Let's dive into Ableton. Here we are in Ableton. We have a track here which sounds like this. Already, we have 3 layers. We've got a sub layer, which is just playing the sub component in mono, right? It's playing a fairly straightforward chord progression. A minor, we're actually playing a 6, 7, 4 chord progression, and then we go up to the root note later on. There is also a main component layer, which sounds like this, which is a bit brighter and has a full spectrum sound. All it's doing here is just cutting out the subs. So this is the main component, and I'm automating this over time. And then we have a mid-wide layer, which sounds like this. So this is already quite harmonically rich. It's got some chorus on. It's got wider, which is a free plugin, by the way, which adds width, which doesn't affect mono compatibility too much. It's pretty transparent, and I made this a little bit wider. So altogether you have this. Now, the real secret sauce here is adding in another layer. So what I might do is duplicate this main component here. For this chord progression, what I'm going to do is add in a harmony for it using a similar sound. So I'm going to go up an octave and maybe do it a perfect fifth apart from the root note. So rather than just playing the root note like so, up an octave, let's actually pitch this down. Well, pitch it up a fifth, a perfect fifth. So if we're on F, this would be on C here. And now we have this if you play with the main layer. Sounds pretty nice. What we could do is probably filter off some of these lows so it's a bit more in the mids. Creates a bit more separation. Now, let's call this one fifth component. And what I could do here as well is duplicate it again and have something playing, let's call this like third component, something like that. And what we could do is we could have this playing on the 3rd degree of the scale. So if we were on the 5th, this was how it was originally. That's on the root note. But what we could do is pitch this up a 3rd. So now it's going to play a triad. So take a listen to this. To all of them together. Sounds pretty nice, eh? And maybe this could even be up a higher octave. So let's pitch this up even higher. Maybe on this one, we can add a little bit more noise. So let's just open up the noise amount. Maybe use white noise. That's pretty nice. Open the cutoff. So much emotion and texture, but the key is, right, we're playing chords with the bass, so you have to have them voiced differently. You can't just play a triad all in the same register. That'll sound super cluttered. So actually, this 5th component here is a bit more in the lower mids, and this 3rd component is actually like not really even in the bass anymore. You could have this down an octave, which would sound a bit like this. But I quite like it higher up. And this has independent control, right? So you can mix these so they're how you want them to be. Which is quite nice. And with that in mind, you can then, throughout your arrangement, introduce each layer later on. So for example, you could start off with just like the root note earlier on in the track, and then maybe there's a little mini break. You introduce the 5th degree. the second layer. And then later on for the final climax, you can have the third degree coming in as well. And this is going to add progression to your arrangement, but also it's just going to sound super harmonically rich. Like if you listen in context of everything else in the loop. Super nice. Now you could also change the sound, but you'd have to have something that matches the vibe. So just by duplicating it is quite easy. Now, a more advanced thing you could do is rather than just playing the same pattern, you could like write like a melody within the pattern. So on this third component here, we could go like da, da, da. And then maybe here. Something like. Something like this. That's nice. Take a listen. That's really nice. That's pretty nice. So that is a slightly more advanced thing you could do. So you can kind of have sounds which are playing, you can either just have them following the same chord pattern, which is, it still sounds awesome, right, as we did before. But here you've got what's actually called counterpoint harmony taking place. And you could do this with the fifth component as well. And this is going to lead to more unorthodox harmonic possibilities, but you have to really know what you're doing to get them right. But if you want to see a video on counterpoint harmony, I'm actually doing one, so make sure you hit that subscribe and like this video, and maybe I'll release it very soon. Now, something else you could do with this bass line would be to do something a little bit crazy and create a super gritty texture. I'm going to duplicate the main component here and call this gritty layer. And this is something I'm doing quite a lot, and it's insane, but you have to tame it. So I have some pretty bonkers serum presets for drum and bass, because I also make liquid drum and bass under a different alias. And what I'm going to do is, let's just find an absolutely bananas drum and bass sound and then just layer it in subtly to create a bit more movement. So let's take a listen to this one. That's quite cool. That's pretty cool, but maybe we can find something even weirder. So this is an absolutely insane sample. So something like this is, I like this, and yes, it's absolutely crazy, but if you just put a tiny bit of craziness in there, you're going to have a very gritty and interesting bass line. So maybe we just roll off the lows on this. And just tuck this behind the bass. So here you've got this. Make this super wide as well. Wider on here. Just a little bit of craziness. In context. Maybe take a few more of those lows out. A bit more of the highs out. super subtle, but adds a lot of movement to the bass. So yeah, pretty crazy, unorthodox thing you can do is pop in a drum and bass preset and just tame it a little bit and tuck it just behind, and it's going to create a lot more of an interesting, chaotic bass line alongside a rich harmonic one. And yeah, there's a lot of layers here, but like, you know, layers can create a huge amount of thickness, warmth, and stereo information, because the concept of layering really is like, do you want to do one of three things? Maybe the one sound doesn't have frequencies, or it's not a full spectrum sound, and you need to compensate by having a layer that does have those frequencies in. Second being, it might be a very dry, it might be a very mono sound, so like right down the middle, so you might want to make something wider with a second layer, whilst keeping the mono layer intact. And thirdly, what we've just done today is like harmonic layering, so like maybe you want additional harmonic components to the sound. So 3 concepts of layering. If you want me to do a video on layering, drop a comment below and press subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out. So yeah, some pretty crazy stuff right there, eh? There you have it. Advanced harmonic layering for basses. You can do this principle with pads. You could do it with honestly anything, but it's a really cool concept that you guys should try out. Push yourself out of the comfort zone and do something different. Now, if you want to learn more cool stuff like this is just a drop in the ocean of the kind of stuff that we cover in our professional house and techno producer program, where we can help you make a professional level track a week by showing you the full workflow required, all of the creative, all of the technical, and all of the songwriting arrangement components you're going to need to produce, to write, produce, mix, master, and ultimately release these tracks that you make every week, alongside building a fan base with you and creating the infrastructure in place for you to grow an audience and eventually go full-time with music if that's what you want to do. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a video in the description, and watch that video first, see what it's all about, explains everything in full detail, and if it all sounds good to you, you can book a call with me or Tim and we'll talk through how we can make it happen. But we don't work with everybody, so make sure you watch that video first and don't book a call if you're not serious about this. Don't waste our time and don't waste your own time. So yeah, check it out. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video, and let's do this. Let's make some awesome music.